I wasn't born into certainty. I was born into questions. Questions about where I belonged, how far I could go, and whether dreams that felt too big for my surroundings were even allowed. I've stood in rooms where I was underestimated, mislabeled, and quietly judged before I ever spoke. And if you're listening right now feeling like your dreams don't match your reality, I want you to know, neither did mine. My life didn't move in straight lines. It zigzagged through fear, rejection, self-doubt, and moments where giving up felt easier than believing again. I've started over more times than people realize, in new countries, new industries, new versions of myself. Every step forward demanded courage before confidence ever showed up. Dreams don't come alive because you're fearless. They come alive because you walk forward even when you're scared. So if you're a dreamer sitting in the dark, wondering whether your story matters, let me remind you, your beginning does not define your ending. Every struggle you're facing right now is shaping the strength you'll need next. Don't wait for permission. Don't wait to feel ready. Your life story, just like mine, has the power to inspire if you choose to keep going. Dreams don't ask where you come from. They don't check your bank balance, your last name, your accent, or the street you grew up on. Dreams arrive uninvited, often when your surroundings are telling you to stay small. I grew up watching the world from a place that wasn't designed to produce global ambitions, yet something inside me refused to shrink, and that quiet refusal is where everything begins. When your dreams are bigger than your circumstances, people will call them unrealistic. They'll say you should be grateful for what you have instead of asking for more. But here's what no one tells you. Ambition is not disrespect. Wanting more does not mean you hate where you come from. It means you honor it enough to believe it can be a launch pad, not a limitation. There were moments when my environment felt like a box, and my dreams felt like they were pushing against its walls, asking for space. Space to grow, space to breathe, space to fail and try again. I didn't always know how I would get there. I just knew staying where I was, mentally or emotionally, would slowly erase the person I wanted to become. Big dreams don't come with a map. They come with discomfort. There's a loneliness that comes with dreaming loudly in a quiet place. You start noticing how few people see what you see, how often you have to explain yourself, how often you're asked to be practical instead of passionate. But that loneliness isn't a sign you're wrong. It's often proof that you're early. When I stepped into spaces that were unfamiliar, I didn't blend in immediately. I stood out, sometimes painfully, sometimes awkwardly. And yet, standing out was never the problem. Shrinking to fit would have been. Big dreams demand that you risk being misunderstood long before they're celebrated. Your circumstances might tell you to wait, to settle, to be realistic. But dreams don't grow in comfort zones. They grow in courage, in the decision to say yes before everything makes sense, in the willingness to take steps that scare you because staying still scares you more. There were doors I knocked on that didn't open, rooms I entered where I wasn't welcome, moments when my confidence wavered because I was constantly reminded of where I came from. But every closed door taught me something vital. My dream did not need consensus. It needed commitment. When your dream is bigger than your circumstances, resilience becomes your language. You learn to translate doubt into drive. You stop waiting for validation and start building proof. You understand that every setback is simply asking, how badly do you want this? You don't outgrow your roots by dreaming big. You expand them. You carry your accent, your culture, your history into spaces that have never seen them before. And sometimes, just by existing there, you become proof that the boundaries others accepted were never real to begin with. Big dreams will cost you comfort. They will test your patience. They will demand versions of you that you haven't met yet. And that's exactly the point. Because circumstances may define where you start, but they do not get to vote on how far you go. Rejection is one of the most misunderstood experiences in life. We take it personally. We carry it like a verdict, and we allow it to speak louder than our own belief. I've been rejected more times than I can count, in ways both obvious and subtle. Sometimes it was a clear no. Other times it was silence, hesitation, or the feeling of being overlooked. Each time it hurt, and each time it tried to convince me that I didn't belong. When you're rejected, the first instinct is to question yourself. You replay every decision, every word, every flaw you think someone else noticed. You wonder if you should have tried harder, spoken differently, been smaller or louder. But rejection doesn't always mean failure. Often it means misalignment. It means that where you are knocking is not where you are meant to enter. There were moments when I wanted one opportunity so badly that I couldn't imagine another one replacing it. I attached my worth to outcomes I couldn't control, and when those doors stayed closed, it felt like the end of the story. But life has a way of redirecting you when your vision is too narrow to see the bigger plan. Rejection doesn't show up to destroy you. It shows up to move you. It removes you from spaces that would have trapped you, limited you, or required you to become someone you were never supposed to be. At the time, that feels unfair. In hindsight, it feels necessary. I had to learn not to beg for spaces that didn't recognize my value. Not to chase approval from people who couldn't see beyond their own expectations. The moment you stop asking rejection to explain itself, you free up energy to focus on becoming undeniable. Redirection requires humility. It asks you to release what you thought success looked like and stay open to what it could become. It often pushes you into unfamiliar territory, where nothing feels certain, except your desire to keep moving forward. That uncertainty is uncomfortable, but it's also where reinvention begins. I've walked away from opportunities that looked perfect on paper but felt wrong in my spirit. I've stepped into roles that scared me because they demanded growth instead of comfort. Each redirection forced me to trust myself more than the noise around me. People don't see the hours of self-doubt that follow rejection, the nights where confidence feels fragile, the moments where you question whether starting over is worth the risk. But starting over doesn't erase your progress, it refines it. Every rejection carries information. It teaches you what you tolerate, what you won't compromise, and how you stand when support disappears. It builds a quieter, deeper confidence that isn't dependent on applause. If you stay present through rejection instead of bitter, you begin to notice how it sharpens you. You listen differently. You choose differently. You stop chasing what isn't choosing you back. Redirection doesn't promise ease. It promises alignment. And alignment creates momentum that force never could. When you allow rejection to guide you instead of defeat you, your journey stops being about proving them wrong and starts being about becoming fully yourself. Confidence is often mistaken for something you're born with, something effortless, something that shows up only after success arrives. But confidence is not the starting point. Courage is. Long before anyone believed in me, before the applause, before the validation, there were choices I had to make without reassurance. I had to step forward even when my voice shook, even when I didn't know if I would be accepted. Courage shows up in quiet moments, in the decision to raise your hand when you're unsure of the answer, in walking into a room where you feel like an outsider and refusing to apologize for your presence. Confidence comes later, but courage is what gets you through the door. There were times I felt unprepared, unqualified, and exposed. I was surrounded by people who seemed to know the rules, who belonged effortlessly, and yet, waiting to feel ready would have meant never moving at all. Courage asked me to try before I felt worthy, to learn in public, to fail where others could see. We don't talk enough about how uncomfortable growth feels, how courage doesn't feel heroic in the moment. It feels like doubt, fear, and resistance all happening at once. You question yourself not because you're weak, but because what you're attempting matters. Confidence isn't built by avoiding fear. It's built by surviving it. Every time you choose action over hesitation, something shifts. You may not notice it immediately, but you're building evidence. Evidence that you can handle more than you thought. I've made mistakes that played out under a spotlight. I've taken risks that didn't deliver instant rewards. And yet, each time I didn't retreat, I became steadier. Courage taught me I could recover. Confidence learned to trust that. People will tell you to wait until you're sure, until you're ready, until you're confident enough. But certainty is a luxury few ever experience before taking chances. The truth is, courage creates the certainty people admire later. There is power in choosing yourself before the world agrees, in saying yes to an opportunity that intimidates you, in trusting that growth will meet you on the way, not before the journey starts. Being courageous doesn't mean you don't feel fear. It means you refuse to let fear make your decisions. Fear will always offer reasons to stay where you are. Courage asks a more important question: what happens if you don't move? Over time, courage compounds. What once felt impossible becomes familiar. What once terrified you becomes routine. And slowly, without noticing, confidence takes shape, built on layers of survival, learning, and persistence. The most confident people you admire didn't wait for self-belief to arrive magically. They acted through insecurity. They showed up without guarantees. They trusted effort over certainty. When you understand this, your relationship with fear changes. Fear stops being a stop sign and starts becoming a signal that you're on the edge of something that matters, something worthy of your courage. Confidence will come. It always does. But courage has to move first. Reinvention is often misunderstood as inconsistency, as if changing direction means you didn't know who you were to begin with. But growth demands updates. The person you were at one stage of life may not be equipped for the next. And honoring that truth takes tremendous strength. I have reinvented myself many times, not because I was lost, but because I was listening. Every reinvention begins with discomfort. The realization that what once fit no longer does, that the environment, the identity, or the expectations around you are starting to feel smaller than your potential. Ignoring that feeling is easy. Acting on it requires honesty and bravery. There were moments when stepping into a new version of myself meant letting go of validation I had already earned. It meant being a beginner again, risking failure in unfamiliar spaces and accepting that my confidence would temporarily feel fragile. But comfort can slowly turn into stagnation if you don't challenge it. Reinvention asks you to release the need to be understood immediately. When you shift, people question you. They compare the old version of you to the new one and decide which they prefer. That judgment can make you hesitate. But living for consistency at the cost of authenticity eventually drains you. I've learned that power doesn't come from holding on to labels. It comes from refusing to be trapped by them. When you allow yourself to evolve, you discover capabilities you didn't know you had. Reinvention forces you to learn faster, listen deeper, and rely on your inner compass instead of external applause. Starting over doesn't erase your past, it builds on it. Every experience, every failure, every lesson becomes part of your toolkit. Reinvention is not about denying where you came from. It's about expanding what you can become. There is fear in leaving familiar ground, fear of losing relevance, fear of being judged for changing your mind, fear of stepping into a world where your past success doesn't guarantee future acceptance. But fear is often a sign that you are growing beyond what once defined you. Reinvention requires self-trust, the kind that doesn't crumble when outcomes are uncertain. The kind that stays steady even when the path ahead isn't clearly marked. You stop asking for permission and start asking yourself better questions. People may resist your reinvention because it challenges their understanding of you. It forces them to update their own expectations. But their comfort is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to live in alignment with who you are becoming. Every reinvention sharpens your sense of self. You become less attached to roles and more committed to values. Less reactive to opinion and more anchored in purpose. Reinvention strips away what is no longer essential and reveals what truly matters. The strongest version of you is not the one who remains the same forever. It is the one who adapts with intention, who blends humility with ambition, who understands that growth is a continuous process, not a destination. Reinvention is not a retreat. It is a strategic advance into the life you are meant to live. Persistence is quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't always look impressive from the outside. Most of the time, it looks like showing up again after nothing worked the day before. It looks like continuing when the excitement has faded and all that's left is discipline and belief. I learned early on that talent might open a door, but persistence is what keeps you standing inside the room. There were phases in my life where progress was slow and invisible. No applause, no clear signs that I was moving in the right direction. Just effort, layered on top of effort. Persistence asked me to trust work more than mood and commitment more than motivation. Because motivation is unpredictable, but persistence is a decision you make daily. Every meaningful journey tests you at the point where quitting feels reasonable, when others stop checking in, when the results don't match the effort, when doubt grows louder than encouragement. Persistence is choosing to continue without certainty, without guarantees, and often without recognition. People often celebrate success as if it happened overnight. What they don't see are the seasons of repetition, the same routines, the same sacrifices, the same setbacks revisited again and again. Persistence builds strength not by dramatic moments, but by consistency in ordinary ones. I've had to remind myself that slow progress is still progress, that refining your craft unseen is not wasted time, that learning patience is part of the process even when impatience feels justified. Persistence teaches you endurance, and endurance is what allows success to last. There is a difference between persistence and stubbornness. Persistence listens, it adapts, it improves, it doesn't cling to methods that no longer work, but it never lets go of the purpose. It allows you to evolve while staying committed to the vision. Persistence also reshapes your identity. You begin to see yourself as someone who finishes, someone who doesn't disappear when things get difficult. That self-trust becomes your foundation. Even when external validation is missing, internal reliability keeps you moving. Some days persistence looks like confidence. Other days it looks like survival. Both count. Showing up exhausted still counts. Trying again after heartbreak still counts. Continuing after failure still counts. Persistence honors effort in all its forms. Destiny isn't built in a single decision. It's built in accumulation, in small, repeated choices that don't seem important until they suddenly are. Every time you choose to continue, you place another brick in the life you're building. Persistence demands sacrifice, comfort, immediacy, and sometimes relationships that can't grow with you. But what it gives in return is alignment. You begin to live in rhythm with your purpose instead of chasing outcomes. The longer you persist, the clearer your path becomes. Not because obstacles disappear, but because you learn how to move through them. You stop being surprised by setbacks. You respond instead of react. When persistence becomes part of who you are, success stops being the goal and starts being the result. You understand that destiny isn't something you wait for. It's something you earn through effort, patience, resilience, and relentless belief in what you're building even when no one else can see it.